glory to everyone who defends Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his troops are holding out in the battle for Sfera.
Apparently they are. Well, welcome to Midsummer UK time. This is the place where I work, and here it is in glorious daytime Technicolor. My car and the owner's car and loads of other people coming and going into this waste salvage station. Anyway, what we've got here today is Tony's Epiphone Les Paul and plastic nut from hell, missing cover, trussrod cover, pitted frets, a bit of fret buzz, loose what's-its, possibly replacement pickups given the gold hardware here, and some rewiring required on the bridge circuit. Now we've got a completely knackered adjuster here, which is very, very difficult, so I've come up with a pair of spares which I'll replace these with anyway, so it remains easy to use. That's the idea anyway. So so I'm here today in the daytime because I have to do some stuff in the evening time, so doing the daytime shift makes more sense. Nice creamy sort of aged buttermilk kind of colour really, and you can see how it's aged in different ways up here, and you can see the original colour underneath and then the aged colour. So it's all good stuff, just for the wiring and the basic setup, so we're going to take care of that. So the first thing I've done off camera while I was charging a few things was the usual. I prepared a nut. Here it is, front ready to go. Ta-da! Found me spare what's-its, got my strings out, set the playing action both ends, and set it very low as a target, and set the neck relief to very minimal as well. So when you've got a load of, I don't know if you can see here, but the strings here are pretty gnarled. So when you've got gnarly old strings like this that are sort of just waiting to break, for me it makes sense to get straight into the fret leveling, whatever else needs doing, so we can use up these strings as sacrificial strings. Because I could sort of say, well, let's change the nut first. Well, let's not mess around with these strings anymore and give them any excuse to break. Oh, by the way, today I'm wearing my Tangerine Dream t-shirt my mum gave me for my birthday, because she heard that I'd been to see Tangerine Dream recently, and we were always good family, a family that loved Tangerine Dream. So it's one of those things. It's a nice picture and thought and everything, but the shirt itself is made of that sort of, I don't know, the kind of cotton that doesn't breathe very well, or whatever the mix is. So it feels a bit stuffy. Anyway, so I'm just going to get straight into the fret leveling here. Now, for those of you who know and care, those of you who know, and those of you who don't know but do care, what I'm doing here is I'm basically leveling the frets with the neck in the playing configuration. And the reason that some people might say, well, why on earth are you doing that? Because it imposes some weird constraints that you have to work around, as you can see now. The reason I do this is because it's slightly more accurate, first of all, than doing it with the conventional way, with the strings off and the neck flat. But it isn't primarily just the extra accuracy that I'm doing it for. I'm doing it because this method, with the strings still on, sort of understandably is the only method that I can stop and check every part of the neck, and I can stop and check whether something plays well or not without waiting to the end where I get to restring it. So because the strings are still on, I can now hold off the leveling part. Bit of a mess up there. Now, what this first pass with this tool has told me is that there's a big low spot up here, so a kink downwards, and actually it's the main one on this whole neck. Often you get 3 or 4 different areas in the overall topography of the neck, but in this case it's just that the principal area of problem is down at this end. So I'm going to continue leveling all over a little bit, but I'm going to, at some point in about now, I'm going to focus my attentions a little bit more, and what I mean by that is I'm going to press down a little bit at this end to really try and even out or balance out these frets. And there's a nick on one of these frets here which suggests the reason why these are all low, and these are substantially lower, these here. One of the reasons for this could be that these have taken a hit before, which has put this nick into it, and they've been maybe individually sanded, or as a little group they've been sanded to try and remove this problem. Now, the string is as dirty as you can imagine, so it's ready to break. So with a low section in your neck, your aim there's a low point running into a high spot. So your aim is to make this play, do whatever leveling here is required to make this play. And as you can see, I can stop, reconsider, come back, do a bit more. And what I'm able to do is I'm able to just keep going until it's playing at the action that I've already set. And as I told you, I've already set the 3 main components of the playing action. That equals the first and last fret actions and the neck relief. So having set those, my aim is now to make the frets comply with the action I've set. Not perfect, but better than it was. So I'll do a little bit more on this track. Now this is, I'm admit that I'm pushing this really hard, as in I've begun with a very low playing action, which if I were to just ease off a little bit on that playing action, then we would, i.e. lifting it slightly, then we would get rid of the slight zizzing or buzzing, or what I call fret slap. We would kind of clear that up, or we'd alleviate that. But that would be something I would do in the last resort if it's not possible within the amount of metal we've got left to play with, and so on and so on. If it's not possible to make the chosen action play, so it's like I said, it's very low. It's a little hint there, little hint there. Well, if I just double check the playing action, we are right down on 1 millimeter. So what I can show you now, by just raising this a tiny fraction, I can show you the difference, just the minutest raise in the action. And this is me kind of compromising back to my normal 1.2. So that's great. That will do me. So I started off ultra low, and I've sort of what's the word? I've gone back, compromised on the action, the lowness of the action. But it's not in any way a defeat, because it's still at my normal target action, which is 1.2 measured at the last fret, and 1.5 on the 1.2 on the high E measured at the last fret, and 1.5 on the high, 1.5 on the low E last fret, and 1.2 on the high E last fret. And those are my sort of working low target actions. And occasionally, just for giggles, I try and get it down to 1, which is what I was doing there, but that didn't want to do it. Now I could have gone there if I'd have continued leveling, but you know, you are always trading off fret life versus, you know, the ultra low action. That's not bad. I'm going to live with that. Now I'm going to recalibrate as I move to the G track, and just to see whether the relief on the neck has moved. And it has actually changed a very slight amount. So I basically readjust. In this case, I'm adding on a tiny bit of curvature into the truss rod, very small amount, just about get there. We are there. So very, very small adjustment, but it does show that the radius changes as you go across the profile of the neck. So now I'm leveling what I call the G track, and so on one hand I'm looking at the fret wear down there, and it's all very good if I'm helping to alleviate that, but my main concern with any track is to make sure that each individual note played anywhere in the track, and on top of that, especially with something like the G track, is to make sure that bends on the high E as they come across the neck profile, that they don't run out of clearance, which is often where even the tiniest height irregularities on the fret will show up when you're bending across from the E to the G. So first thing is to check individual notes. Okay, and then bend right, it's pretty much there, but I'm just going to do another run at the top there with the G track, because I'm just sensing a little bit of sort of zing, as I would call it, right up here on the high bends. So I just want to make sure that we can iron those out, and it quite often is somewhere around this top end where you get often where you do most of the biggest bends, which is where the kind of geometry and the mechanics of the string allow you to do it. But so it's more likely the higher you up the neck, the higher you are up the neck, the more likely you're going to get somebody bending across, and that means that has to be clear. So that is. Now I'm going to calibrate for the D, and this is a very subtle thing, and I had a customer call me on one of my Zoom one-to-one teaching sessions, masterclassy things, whatever you want to call it, but Zoom one-to-one session, and I went through this process with him step by step, in the fret leveling in this way, and it was great to be able to cover with him the whole thing of how to read what the frets are telling you as the beam starts to level, because it's something you learn with experience, but it's also something that you can't get immediately until you have experience. So in the absence of lots of experience, somebody going through it in real time with someone is quite helpful. Pretty good. Hear that noise? It's kind of rattle on that low E. That's what I call fret slap, and that's not caused by an individual high fret, which is what we often think about, or what we're often working to correct when we're doing fret leveling, or conventionally that's what we're aiming to do. That rattle, or slap as I call it, is a result of a slightly different problem, whereas familiar fret buzz is caused usually by a single individual high fret in a series, which then or high or low fret I should say, which then causes the immediate one before it to buzz out or choke out on bends. The fret slap is found across a whole load of notes on a particular string, and that's caused less by individual high frets, but more by groups of high frets as a as a result of the overall geometry of the neck. And it took me about 5 or 6 years of doing this to recognize or to define the difference, or to identify or make a note of the difference between the two, because right at the top and down at the first part. Yeah, because logically, if you just fret level as if you're trying to just get rid of the effect of a single high fret, you should just, you could just keep going until it all sounds great. That would be the simple instruction. With a couple of caveats, i.e., the tighter the radius is, the higher the action has to be overall. Whether you like it or not, there's no beating the basic geometry in this situation. But generally speaking, I separated it into 2 descriptions for my own peace of mind, because I find it much easier to think of this the process of taming overall this sort of waviness of the neck. I think for me it works better to see that as separate from identifying and tackling one single fret, which still uses the bar and you still have to do all the other frets around. But when you're dealing mainly with fret slap, which I am on this track here now, what I'm looking to do, if possible, is to impose the perfect curve of this leveling tool onto the less than perfect curve of the bumpy neck underneath. And it's bumpy partly because wood is anyway, nothing perfect about a wooden fretboard, but it's also bumpy because it's under compressive force from the strings pulling in either direction. And of course this is something it isn't suffering from if you use the other fret leveling method. So the reason it's more accurate this way is partly because it's mainly because when you do leveling with the neck slack, or the strings off and the neck in flat position, the neck isn't compressed, and so some of that topography isn't at play, whereas it is when we have it strung like this. Now, just going to check the actual height of this, because you may be struggling here. I think that's a fraction low, but I'm going to just correct a tiny bit of that. I need to do this, because this screwdriver this slot is absolutely wrecked. You want to be dead on the 1.5. Ta-da! There's a little bit right here about the 14th, 15th fret. It's not perfect all round. I'm going to do some general all over, but the 14th, 15th fret are particularly suffering. So I'm going to do a little bit more general purpose leveling, but I'm going to go back up to this 14th, 15th area. And all I'm really doing is I'm keeping the same basic shape of the neck, basic shape of the bar, but I'm just pressing in one place a little bit harder than the others, just to kind of level out this area here that's causing that little bit of extra slap, as I would call it. And so it means some of the frets have to be a little bit harder hit than others to get there. And this is the price you pay for that lower action. There's no simple way around it unless it happens to be perfect from the point of fretting. So we have a little spot here where I think it's a low, that's the low spot. So things playing in here aren't very happy. Now what I'm just going to do is quickly double check what I've got in the way of relief, which is none. So I think we need to again roll back a little bit on this, on the relief, which I'd had as practically flat, but this thing is kind of doesn't really want to do it flat. So we're going to have to give it a little bit of neck relief to overcome this last bits of slap. So there's a bit more. Still in that hole up there, which is really difficult to get rid of. I've given it that bit more, well, some relief, which is more than it had. So I think what I want to do is just focus down on this spot here now, which is it's suffering from a low spot after the 12th fret, and that's causing the notes down here to have a little bit of slap. Now they all play, but they're just slightly slappy, as I would call it. I'm afraid it's going to require evening out if we're going to make it play better. And I think that's going to be about it. It's a very low action all round, so I'm not surprised, but it that'll be me. That'll do. So part of the deal is recognizing what you can go beyond and what you can't. So now I'm just going to open the windows here, because this place, whilst it is cool when I come in, it quite quickly heats up in here. So on a summer's-ish day, even though it feels pleasantly cool to walk into here, it very quickly, with a bit of body heat, like me, very quickly heats up, and I start getting very, very hot, which I'm not complaining about, because it's sort of advantageous in the winter, because when I come in it can be very, very cold, but within 5 minutes or so it can heat up and be pleasant for the rest of the time, and it doesn't require hardly any heating really, because of the construction, which is all made out of insulated panels, tin-lined insulated panels, which is great as far as keeping that heat in for me, but it's also brilliant as far as being a great surface to stick all my tools on. So everything hangs up courtesy of the tin surround, and of course it's quite well out of the way of the working area. It's quite a bit off to one side. So as a result, there's never any risk. Come on, bridge. Blimey, that is tight. There's never any risk of the tools falling off on guitars, thank heavens. So here we are with the strings and the bridge off, and while I'm at it, I'm just going to try out one of these posts as a replacement. Now this one, that one's knackered. That one is probably as good as that one, but I'll change the pair over. One of these has a slightly worn top, which kind of works out well, because so does the bridge. So the two together probably work very well. Now obviously I've now messed up the playing action, but that doesn't matter, because I can always set that back when the time's right, and then we can fit that on, and everything looks to be good. In fact, the slot is much better now, and it's kind of chrome-wise, it's pretty well in keeping. This thing doesn't want to stand up, because whatever's happened is the bridge, this thing here, somebody's put an insert in of some kind. How weird is that? No, what have they done? Weird. It looks like there was some sort of insert. I've never seen this before. Like a clip. Let's take a look at this. Well, either which way, however fancy this, what I'm looking at actually is, it doesn't really sit properly. So see that I'm going to rest you here so I ain't so shaken. Okay, so you see that? There's a crimped down bit there holding an insert. Gosh, golly gosh, look at that. Now I don't really want to drill that because I've never seen that construction before. That's very weird. See that? Hey, heck, never seen that. Weirdy weird, and that's actually been bashed down to hold it in place. Can you believe that? There's the other end. Same old. So the construction of that is kind of been banged. Tool, you know, in the machine shop, somebody's gone bang and hit that metal to hold that thing in place. Weirdness. Anyway, it all results in what all comes together in what is actually a, regardless of which post you use, it was this stiff on the other one, but when you get them together, it seems that it kind of wants to bounce up a bit. Actually, he's sitting there right now, but it's a tight fit. It's not fantastically ideal, which is really annoying that there's so little wiggle room in these here, two pneumatic bridges, which is one of the several reasons I don't like them at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just while we're in the mood, is I'm going to remove, thank you Epiphone for being friendly and helpful in having the type of nut that, apart from possibility of too much super glue, which is entirely possible, they make them easy enough to remove, and so my replacement is going to sit in there fairly comfortably, so long as I do a little bit of a slot cleaning just to get it as level as I can before I go and fit the new one. So we'll just take away any obvious sticky up glue that's going to cause it to be uneven. Looks like we got some slightly uneven binding here, which is lifting one end up higher than the other, which will lift one end up higher than the other. Let's just have a quick look. That's sitting perfectly in place. That's sitting perfectly in place. Nice fit. Probably starting out a fraction too high, so I may need to come back and take a little bit off the bottom. Mary Poppins. Right. That was me doing my unintentional Bert. Take. Let's take some off the bottom, Mary Poppins. I was listening to it the other night. You can call me pathetic, you can call me what you like, but occasionally I like to either watch or listen to Mary Poppins, because it was a film of my childhood, and I find it it's like listening to white noise sometimes in the background. You know it inside out. Anyway, so I was listening to it the other night, and in the background, like as you do, don't. And the thing that made me laugh was when I discovered or heard Bert in his terrible Cockney again. And there's one line where he says, "When you're with Mary Poppins, you'll went places you'd never thought possible." It makes me crack up, thinking, in what world did anyone ever think that made a sentence? You'll went places. And anyway, but I think it's great that Dick Van Dyke is still alive. I think Julie Andrews is too, actually. I think she's ancient too, but I'm glad they both still are. Somebody will correct me and say, no, she died in 2017, don't you remember? And you'll say, how can you be a real fan if you don't remember it? And, well, I keep getting surprised by somebody being alive who I actually thought had gone. And I keep getting caught out with that. So, okay, so while I'm here, I was going to do the fret crowning malarkey. And some are going to require more crowning than others, and some parts of the frets more than others. So in this case, I know there's quite a bit of heavy, low bass side work. Now, I don't know if you can see, but Well, you probably can't see. Now you'll be able to see. Now you'll be able to see. You can see the little dings in that fret. That tells me the fret wear that hasn't been cleared up. Now you could say, but why aren't you going to carry on and remove all that fret wear? Well, the reason is it's because it doesn't affect play, number one, and overarching principle is that I don't want to remove metal just for the sake of cosmetic wear, or unless it's getting in the way of it playing, and wear at that sort of level doesn't get in the way. You might not like the look of it, and it might remind you of all them cowboy chords you've played throughout your life, but it's in my books it's not a sensible trade, fret life. Now the other good thing about it is this amount, I'm also quite good at gauging where the remainder will be taken off by fret sanding, which we'll do in a minute. So actually quite often I have a little bit left over in the fret, which becomes imperceptible by the time I've done the sanding and the polishing out. So it's not giving up on it altogether, but as a principle, first principle, I won't keep working on it just to get rid of those marks. If they come out in the general process of first of all leveling the frets and then secondly of sanding them, polishing them out, then great. And usually it does, unless they're very, very severe. But not as an end in itself. Unless it's a ding, which stops you bending strings, for example. So if you've had the fret's had a blow, or a string's being pressed into it, and you get a little nick or a notch. Why do those words begin with N? Get a nick or a notch, and in which case you may have to work everything around and including that fret to get rid of it, because it is a much more of a showstopper damage. Over here it's very minimal, and I think we'll get rid of almost all of it in a combination of the leveling process, which we've done, and the sanding, which comes in a minute. Anyway, there's a bit of wear up here too, so two favourite spots, down here and up here. Oops. Now I've got to be careful not to whack this, and sometimes I tell myself, oh, it's easy not to, I'll just concentrate really hard, and then other times, because you're applying some force, it's quite difficult to avoid it. So it don't hurt me none to use a bit of the old Grilla tape. I wouldn't do this on a vintage machine, but on a modern Chinese-made or Far Eastern-made guitar, you'd be safe to do it. So what I'm doing is I'm just protecting the finish there from this going, which sometimes it will do. And it's if you're recrowning frets, you're usually handling it under a little bit of pressure, because otherwise you can't do your crowning. So if it comes off under a bit of physical pressure, which you don't want it to do any damage to the finish. So yes, when you're with Mary Poppins, you went places you didn't think possible, or never knew existed. One of the two. Oh, Bert, you are a one, or whatever she says. Of course, in the sort of in the story narrative world of Mary Poppins, you can imagine making that film now without there having to be some sort of romantic interest between Bert and Mary Poppins. I don't think you could have two, inverted commas, eligible people in a movie that weren't somehow getting linked together. I think people couldn't bear it that they weren't getting it on, or some way or other. But I suppose well, no, I was going to say the original story. Let's not call it the original story. Let's call it in the original era of Disney. I suppose more than anything else, what the Mary Poppins story, as interpreted by Disney, probably is an outsider's take on the British class system. In which sense, even though it's nothing like, apparently, it's nothing like Thingy's original story. By the way, I'm taking these tuners off, so I can just clean up the headstock properly, give it a refresh while we're at it. So I kind of can feel that feels like the Poppins 50s, 60s Poppins of Walt Disney was probably all about his take on, or his view, or his impression of the British class system. And of course, in that sense, then it would have been absolutely impossible for, even though they were both, I haven't finished my sentence, for Bert and Mary Poppins to get it on. Because, well, am I even sure about this? Because they were both domestics. They're both domestics, but he was working class, and she was, well, what was she? She was working class, but a domestic of some sort, a nanny. But maybe nannies were from a middle class sort of background. I can't think. In fact, they must have been. I think domestic servants in the Victorian, Edwardian era would have been ranged from working class scullery maids and footmen. No, footmen would have been probably a bit better educated or trained. But I guess there was probably a class system within the world of the domestics as well. But anyway, I suppose perhaps the other thing about the whole deal was that Mary Poppins was supposed to be presented as a paragon of virtue, which means you couldn't have had any romantic interests, because in those days it would have been upsetting to children to imagine those types of people, or any people in their experience having adult proclivities. Anyway, who knows? But I still think that it would be impossible to make modern Mary Poppins without there being a romantic thing. And by the way, if anyone wants to know, I've never seen the so-called sequel-y sort of updatey thing, whatever it is, really. And I don't see myself ever doing it. Couldn't bear it. Okay, so Mary Poppins aside, maybe or maybe not. Just boom. No. What I think would be a smart thing for me to do now, well, I've got a boring process of sanding and polishing the frets out, but that's normal. That has to happen on every setup. But what I think I'll probably do now is turn yonder guitar on yonder guitar's face. I'll take these off now. I think we better change the environment a little bit and get onto the wiring thingy. Now I'm just looking as well. One of the things about these guitars, sorry, you're at the wrong end, my fault. One thing about these guitars is that the places where dirt gets caught is down here in this thing, scratch plate. So I'm going to remove that so we can just get a good clean under there and remove historical grime. Not over there, not over there, not over there. And of course, whilst there'll be historical grime, there'll also be a big colour change to be expected. So I don't think this has ever been off, certainly not for any length of time, because it's imprinted it's protected the body from ultraviolet. Anyway, so the funny thing about Mary Poppins, I think, is that there are lots of funny things about it, but a lot of it has to do with kind of, I'm still not really sure what the message of it is, because it's either confused, or it's confused because it's overly simplistic, or maybe it's more sinister than I think, or maybe I misunderstand it. So in a way it sort of stays interesting because I don't quite get it. But so I sort of always think about a sort of modern message might be something like, hey, Mr. Business Person. I think we've seen it in, what have we seen it in? Things like Mrs. Doubtfire. You know, I mean, there've been millions though, but films where the dad doesn't pay enough attention and doesn't come to the game. Oh, Peter Hook, for example, classic one, Hook. So, you know, the father's too busy with his cell phone and his corporate lifestyle to come to the ball game, and so the son in Hook finds himself vulnerable to the approaches of the wicked Captain Hook, who lavishes more attention on him than his real father has, and so on. So it becomes a tug of war. But that's simplistic in a way, because in that movie, Peter Panning, Robin Williams' character, I don't know why I'm just citing Robin Williams films, but Peter Panning learns the true error of his ways, and he rescues, or kind of puts his children first, and hurrah, that's the end of the story. I mean, it has its own problems within that story too, but at least as far as the kind of the main motif is, children are more important than your career and those earthy rewards, so make them important. And actually it's simplified in that he chooses one over the other. And the problem I've got with Mary Poppins is that he seems to get his cake and eat it, George Banks. Not that I don't want him to, and it's all very nice that somebody wins everything, you know, wins the whole lot out, but it just confuses me somewhat, because I don't quite understand how you can get it both. So in I want to just support this bit off the floor. Holes there and stuff that's broken away. All right, let's do that there. Right. Yeah. So in Mary Poppins, he's ignoring his kids for his career in the bank, and Mary Poppins is brought in to kind of try and bring some order to otherwise chaotic house, and it's chaotic because Mrs. Banks is a strange dual character too. She is both staunchly feminist and yet entirely under the thumb of her husband, which again is a kind of an odd contradiction. So yeah, you know, how is she a votes for women type, throwing rotten fruit at the Prime Minister at the same time as being under the thumb of her, yes dear, no dear, of course dear, oh what a wonderful idea you just came up with dear, to her husband. Ooh, now, okay, alright, okay, right. So my thought immediately was that Tony had wired this up wrong, because of the way the things were working as I looked at them. But what I've noticed straight away is, see this pot here? Look what it's doing. It's turned round and it's jammed its contacts into the shielding. Now that will short out the whole pot. Right, so that's the bridge volume. So we had the tone button was working as the volume, and right, so let's do a little thing before we try any rewiring, because obviously the less time I spend rewiring this, the better. So the bridge volume's not working. Oh, that's good. Now let us undo this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to correct the position of this to get it away from the edge, and to see whether correct overall function is returned when this thing leaks. Blimey, it doesn't want to come out from there. If and when this thing gets returned to a better position. So it's sort of difficult to do. I'm going to turn it round because it's still sticking where it was put. Right, let's turn this right round, out of the way, and let's do this bit up. Right, that's clear of, and this other one around here is in danger of touching as well. So I think I better take that one out of the mix too, and rotate this one. So if we put the logic here is if I get this problem sorted just by movement, then I think a couple of things apply. One is that I think Tony will be more reassured by his own handiwork that in fact his wiring is good, and then second, it'll give him a warning what to look out for next time. So the only way this is now going to test is to get an amp and a cable, but you know, it's good if it saves me having to rewire things. But that's a good little. Oh, right, we'll deal with this in a minute. Oh, that jack socket is in wrong as well. Oddly enough, there are ways round that the jack socket doesn't want to go, particularly if you put a bigger modern one in on top of the original, which is quite likely what's happened here is that the pickups are, of course the pickups are upgraded, aren't they? Stupid me. Yeah. Neck volume, neck tone, with a bit of flanger thrown in. Okay, bridge, neck, volume not working, tone working. Tone is working as a volume pot as well. That's because I'm turning it and I've turned it back. Hold on a second. So there's definitely part of the problem is definitely this thing hitting the wall. Right, so what I think we should do first of all is turn that round, and as a step towards preventing such bad things happening, I think we need to put in some sort of safety, I don't know what the word would be, insulation. It's not really insulating tape, but it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's anything to try and keep the contacts away from the shielding, but we want to stop it by stopping it move, which it's still trying to do. So I turn it, I hold it, and I'm going to tighten it up in the correct place with a bit of extra muscle. Now this one, I'm going to do the same here. That one's okay, but it still was touching, so I'm going to hold that one here in position, and I'm going to tighten it up with a bit of welly too. Okay, so that one isn't going to turn, and in case it wants to turn back, I can see where it has hit there in the past because it's scraped away some of the shielding, but what I'm going to do to make sure it doesn't again is to insert a bit of temporary shielding sort of thing just to protect. Get in there, son of a gun. Don't know how far down that goes, but that will just have to do. Nearly. Okay, so that one's that, that one's that. Now this one Is it touching anything? Is it touching the ground? The plate is touching the ground. Not really sure about this. Let's have another look with the thing. So previously, right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do before I attempt that. I'm going to undo this. I'm going to undo the jack and rotate it so that it's not getting in the way. So it looks like this, yeah, it's the wrong way round in. The way the tunnel is shaped, it's 90 degrees the wrong way round, and you wouldn't know that really unless you've been caught out with this before. So if you, the thing has to open a certain way, and if it gets in the way, when you put in the jack socket, the tip of the jack pushes the contact outwards, and if there's not enough room it's missing a screw altogether there. Right, if it's going the wrong way, then the problem is it's going to jam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this the same way up, like so, and I'm going to rotate this to a position where it can get the room to open up, which is going to be more like up there than anywhere else. And then I'm going to tighten that up and just check that nothing's touching. You see, the problem is we've got, right, here's another problem. And again, Tony, if you're watching this, you see the jack here. Right, I'm trying to zoom in. I don't want to put the thing too close. Right, see that jack there? See that amount of plain wire, right? As you go into the hole, that can easily come across there and touch out. You see that? So that isn't no good. We don't want that much wire on. The ideal, you want this blue wire and the ground right in up against the. I'll just heat up my thing. Right up against this lug, if you can do it. So I'm going to heat this up, push that all the way through, and we'll then chop it off, because we want as little of the ground to be exposed to touching the hot lug or the tip itself. And in fact, I don't know if you can see here, but this bit here could, because it's even got room to come across and ground out the tip. See that? Bzzz. So that's a no-no in jack socket wiring, and partly one of the reasons it's such a big problem is, of course, you can't see it. It's hidden. So often it goes wrong behind the scenes, and you don't get to do anything about it, know anything about it, because it's happened, and you forget about it because it's under the covers, and lo and behold, you've got a problem, and then you often track it down last of all because of the fact it's hidden away from sight. So the first thing I want to do is to get this off here. Sorry about this, not very well handled. There's the first thing off there. Right, now we can, in fact I'm going to take this off too, because this feels like it's been weakened a bit as well, so I'm not confident about this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, if you think about this, let's try and do it in view. So for the ground, we want this to go through there and end up close to there, like so, as short as possible. Obviously it's going to go that way around, and then going the other way, we want that white one to go in there, but we don't need so much of it. So the first thing we're going to do is probably get me grabbing hands, or me soda sucker, wherever that's gone. Still need the grabbing hands. So this may still not be the ultimate solution to the problem, but we've got to start by ironing out. This is knackered now. It's come to an end. It's reached its end, folks. I've got a bit more tape. I might just hold it. No, it doesn't want to work at all. How the hell was that ever supposed to work, Sam? I don't know, but I thought it would somehow. Pull it down to there, hold it in place like so, and they get another bit on it. They're about £3 these solder suckers, and I just can never get round to remembering to buy another one, and I just keep on using this garbage one. Right, sort of repaired for a moment. It's rubbish. It's lost all functionality. Oh no, just about. Doesn't help that it's got stuff caught in there. Come on, spiky thing. Sorry about this. Sort of delay. Hold up. Right, let's clear the nozzle. That's better. Have some chance of clearing it out. Thanks for that. Fall off there, why don't you? Honestly. Look at that. Proper hool. Right, that's that done. So, next bit. Let's just cut back this because we don't want as much of this. Let's get some fresh wire into play. Difficult to get a handle on, but that's all right. Wind it up a bit. Get some solder to tin it. Solder. It's an old solder. Tin. Come on. Why is this so cold? Does it need to be dipped in the special tip cleaner? Probably. Sorry, I can't see what I'm looking at. Oh yeah. And then clean with that still on it, and how beautiful it looks. Right, so typically at this point we would need the arms, the hands of help, but whether or not they're any good in this situation is another guess. So in the middle, we're going to go in the middle, and we remember we want to go close up, but actually what we'll do is we'll start with the hot, and we'll go there like so. Don't know if you can see that. You certainly can now. That. Snip the excess off, please. Thank you. And then we go in with the ground, and we pull the ground, ideally fairly close. Not so close that it's going to boil the covering of the wire. See that? We're sort of close-ish to the blue. The blue is close to the lug is what I meant. And now we're just solder this. Okay, so, and then we take off all of this naughty excess stuff which runs the risk of grounding out things. So, there is our newly wired thing, which is now much tighter and tidier than before. Now we still have the concern that the sides can touch out, but they always can, so we have to hope that the hole isn't covered in, we don't really want the hole to be covered in shielding paint, and sometimes that's a mistake that we can make too, is to get the shielding inside there thinking it's a good idea, but actually what we want is it not to. So now I'm going to do these up. These are old screws from the Rally, and I'm reusing them because they're sort of worn looking already, so they have a vintage quality. Now, this time when we put this in, listen for how it goes in. Listen for how it goes in. Better, but it's still actually showing up as slightly too tight a place for it to go, which there isn't really a lot of options other than carving a bit of space out of the thing. So what I might do in this case is I might just slack it off and just turn the whole thing a fraction more to hopefully give it room to maneuver that it didn't have before. And we can test this by just, sorry, I'm probably out of view now. As we do it up, it's going to want to turn backwards into its original position. So ultimately it's caused by there not being enough room. It goes in, but it's that tip is touching out, or touching against the edge of the hole, because there isn't enough room in the hole. So it says Epiphone on the jack socket, but it feels like it's not in the right, one way or another, it's not in the right position. I don't see anywhere where there's any more room for this to open up to make any better fit, to be honest. I mean, we can just try and turn it round a little bit further, but whether or not that's actually a better fit, a better position or not, is anyone's guess. It's just going to keep on turning, keep on turning. Oh God, what's that doing? But that's touching. That's going to be touching out against the. So this is a problem. I don't think this is going to be solved this way. So I don't like this. Let's zoom out so you can actually see what's going on now, because this is not good, and it's never going to be easy to put the jack socket in, because this is too big a jack for this tunnel, and I don't know whether the original jack socket was being removed, replaced, or whatever. Let's just take a quick look at the operation here. So as it comes in, it's coming out there and it's pushing out. It's got to be in that position. There's no way around it. That can be closer, but not that's going to make that much difference. And then we've got where's the space which isn't touching. See, it's all touching out a little bit on the we're in danger of touching out on the tunnel, but as I say, if the tunnel isn't shielded, you might get away with it. Oh, I just lost track of what I was doing there. Oh. So all this, you see, it's very 1950s and annoying and time consuming. So if it comes down the bottom there, is there room? Is there room? It comes down the bottom. Let's imagine there's more room at the bottom. Let's do it up there, and let's hope for the best. I'm just guessing now because I haven't really got much option without drilling out and totally changing the tunnel. So let's just do this up. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm choosing where in relation to the square the thing sits, and if I can just get a couple of screws in, we should be able to test whether it's a right sort of fit or not. So the reason I'm doing this is, even though it went in before and played, it's just rubbish. That's just too big, too tight a fit. The reason I'm taking care of this is because unless we get it sorted out so that that tip isn't pressing against the side, we don't know if it's shorting out, full stop. What we don't know, we know now, is that there's not enough room in this whole thing for this socket to work. It's too big, and it's got to push out too far. And there's not any direction so far that I've got it working in that it's happy. And I think, you know, what we might even find, it's even possibly even the location of this, the holes on here. You know, we're jammed right up against the side wall, which actually it may only be possible by moving the bloody holes, which is possibly a good explanation of what's happened, because it's more than likely the standard Epiphone part. But what could have happened in the factory, what I think's happened in the factory is the jack has been screwed in place too close to the side wall, that it's end up touching. So really the only way this is going to work is if we are able to pull it over by about a fair bit, really. More than we've got available to us at the moment, because this side can touch there, and that's fine. We need the side to open up. So if I hold this now jammed in place where I really want it to be, and I put this in, that goes in, it comes out. So that means I have to fill these 4 original holes now in order to make this work. So that means I'm going to get that up there, out of the way, and fill these holes. So you didn't expect that to happen, did you? The question is, what's the best filler for these little holes? And I think it's either going to be, well, it might not be the old toothpicks, because they may actually be a little bit too loose. No, you know what they'll do? They're just about right. So I'm going to put 4 of these in here. We're going to get them glued in. It won't take long. I don't have to wait for the glue to dry or anything complicated like that. So we get the first one in like this, glue it, plenty of glue, wind it in, cut it off, give it a little tap, make sure it's all the way in, like so, and the same again. And then we'll cut them back flush, and then create new holes which will allow the thing to work. But it is there's so little tolerance that you have to get it means it needs the plate to be in exactly the right place for this to work, and of course it isn't in the right place, and therefore it doesn't work. Oops, that'll do, just broke off when it reached the end. So as long as the original holes are covered by the plate, we don't mind. It's not a bad deal. But it's a shame. But I suspect this has been as hard to load the jack in as this from the beginning. I don't see it being any different. I think it's the same original Epiphone jack, and the reason it's sticky is because they just put the panel in just slightly off, and there being so little wiggle room, there's nothing you can do to either replace the these things, the holes, or you widen the hole, which is even bigger deal, really. Okay, so there's me, what sits in there, and then we go and we snip back the sticking out bits. There's glue going around, that's fine. We wrap all this up and bin it, and then we come back with some kitchen roll to clean up, and a blade to slice these back flush, which won't be difficult. Excuse me. Right, so glue out the way, pad out the way, sharp knife, reasonably new one, and then what we'll do is we'll just lift this up, sorry about that, and then you can't see this, but I'm going to bend the blade and use it to just trim the dowels as flush as possible with the finish. So out the way, you, out the way, you. Right, there we are, there we are, there we are. Right, so now I need to get me a drill bit, or two. Have a look. That'll do. That's a bit big actually. Let's go with a smaller one. We prefer to have more grip than less. Then we need the drill. So this is the important bit. So we get yonder thing, we choose which way it's going to go. Right, so I'm starting out with it's going to go this way, and it's going to pull over to this side, and I'm going to test it and say, will that work? Oh yes. So I'm going to get my first drill bit out, and I'm going to, in fact, I'm going to do something else first. I'm going to make a initial hole here. And we're going to puncture, and then use that as a starter point for drilling. And I'm going to now use this. Get the first one in place. One in place, and then just to be absolutely sure, I can, before I do the second, just retest my input. Nice, everything good, everything working, both. That's this bit, soon to be taken care of, as I just line up these holes there, create a new hole there. Try and get a little mark in here, and in here, and in here. So all of that due to things being in the wrong place. But once we get that sorted, it will work the way it should have done. Hey, he said, take a look over here. Very good, very good. Drills more. All right. Thank you. And finally, and we test one more time for good measure. Okay. Now we're back to sort of where we were before. Now we've got to just test. We've moved the things, the jacks, we've moved the pots round. We need to know that this works like it should. So, bridge, tone, neck. Wait a minute, what am I doing? No, bridge volume, bridge tone. So the bridge volume isn't working. Now the tone is working, but the bridge volume isn't working. Neck, volume, working. Neck tone. Neck tone. Neck tone, fine. Bridge. Bridge, bridge. Nothing. Nothing. Tone. That one's working as a tone, back to front. It's wrong. Something's wrong. So something is wrong. So let's just check what we're dealing with, these two here, the bottom two here. So what I'm not used to now is this arrangement, because this is a different kind of switch, but it's not working, so we have to figure out why. Right, first of all, let's just take this off the wall as well, shall we? That was touching the wall. I don't assume it was going to make any difference. What else is not? I'm not happy with this. They're very low down, those contact points. So I think that's dangerously easy. Let's just have a quick look. Sorry about this. I like to get here without... See, I'm kind of assuming that... Oops. Tony's wired this up the right way, but I'm worried that this thing is touching out on something else that it doesn't want to be doing. I'm wondering whether we can lift it away very slightly. There's something about these pots. So let me just check what we've got. Well, I can't see what we've got. We've got these inputs here. Either they're right or they're wrong, and that's a pain in the... What's it for me? So this could sit on there like this and hold it above the ground a bit. It means it won't come through as far, but it might keep the thing... No, it doesn't come through as far, does it? Well, we could do with perhaps a couple of extra washers instead. So something to lift it a fraction more than it currently is. Not much, but maybe just enough. So these push-pull pots are not like the original Epiphone pots that would have been on here. So they're a smaller shaft size to begin with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up away from the wall of the thing, like so, and then we're going to try it again. See if any differences occurred. No, this is still working as a backward tone, and the coil split's right, but why is this working as the tone? So something definitely not right with the wiring going into this. So we have, what the hell is this? That's the joining wire. I don't know what that is. So on this one we go white, green, red, black, and this one we go white, green, red, black, and bare. That seems to be right. This one goes one to there. frankly, Scarlet. That's good. This top one here is good. It's this bottom one that's no good. That's not touching anything there, is it? So that would be in the middle. Why is that? Why is that? Oh dear, hang on. What is going on here? What is going on here? Why is that grounded? What on earth is going on? Okay. That's the output. Across there, input. So this is not really great telly, I know. Let me just look at this, right? So we've got that. Now, see, that's supposed to be grounded. No, that's not supposed to touch there. So this could be touching out on there, first of all. So they're laying down. The fact that the capacitor's lying down, touching the third lug, is not good. The fact that the let's try now. It's still working as a reverse. Okay. So let's pull this one out for a minute. So the problem with these weird effects, this is where it gets really unpleasant. When you get a weird effect, somebody else has wired something up. There's no logic to it. The things that go wrong don't behave logically. Right? So we have the three output, and we have the three things, and I don't even know what these things stand for. That's supposed to be the output from the thing. That's your ins. That should put coil split it if that's the right way round, because it's the same as that one. All appears to be the same. We have the what's this circuit? What the hell's that? Is that the in and the out? It's got to be the out. So let's pick up in, comes through here. What the hell is that? Oh my God. Would never have done it this way personally, but I don't even know what these switches do. So white, green, red. But that only depends if you're using Seymour Duncan pickups, probably, depending on who made this switch and what it was used for. This goes out to the jack. That is a mess over here. God only knows what's going on here. But that's not the one that's at fault, so God only knows why that's not working. That's grounded. What that is. That's the tone, supposedly the tone button. It should be working only as a tone, but it's not, because there's something else wrong. It's this quick connect business, I'm afraid, it's not working for me. And without knowing what the hell it's supposed to add up to, I can't really do much about that. We're supposed to have the output from there goes across to just about there, which should be no problem at all. That's that, and that's that. Clean and clean. It's working there, 500. This one is the pickup in, isn't it? No, this is return. Okay, and those two blues go out. That's out and returns. Holy cow. Do you know what? I actually don't think I can make this work without taking the whole damn thing apart and replacing these units, because I don't know what the instructions are for these things, and it bothers me. You know, I could spend forever trying to work out why your wiring hasn't worked. I don't mean that in a bad way, but this would end up just costing me hours and you pounds and pounds. This is a Les Paul with two independent coil splits. That's all it is. There's nothing overly complex about it. And if it doesn't work right away, then you've wired something wrong, and I can't diagnose it very easily. Something's touching something that it shouldn't be, and that I can't fix, I'm afraid. That's the out. That's the out. But why is the out? Hold on a minute. in is coming from there. Coming from the switch. No. That's the out. The out should be going to the switch. Aha. I think that's what you've done wrong, my dear friend. I think you've reversed these. That's really hard to do because I haven't got any reach or grasp of it. I think you have reversed these little babies, and that's why. This one is in. Out. Out has to go to the switch. Yeah, you've got to send the out to the switch, which is that one. Yep, the out goes to the switch, my friends. Nowhere else. Bloody Nora. Starting to boil. Is that because the weather's clearing a bit? Probably is. Let's try and find a way to hold this in place. Right, what did we say? In. Wait a minute. Bottom one goes, that's the link, yeah, the bottom one goes across to the other one, the right one goes to the out. That's what we're looking at. Let's get this right. Now we don't have a very good angle to attack this from, do we? Gotta get this, see, because this was done first and now I've got a ragged piece of wire to get through a tiny little hole. Oh well, that worked. Surprise, surprise. Not the greatest joint in the world, considering the attack we have to take. Before I put anything back in at this point, let's check this. We are in bridge. Correct. Amundo. Aha! Well solved. Jolly good, young fella, my lad. Right, let's get these extra washers out there because they don't need to be in there. Now I've solved the problem. Well, it was two sets of problems. One of them is the fact that these things were touching out on the walls of the shielding, so that's definitely not good. Good, we are finally sorted. So having those wires reversed actually gave you some output, which it shouldn't have done. You couldn't imagine, if you try to work intellectually round in your head how that managed to put a signal out at all, you'd be struggling to figure it out. But that's the weirdness of weird. That's how things go. And it was giving you a signal, albeit the wrong way. It was. I guess the long and short of it is what I'm trying to say is you'd never be able to, unless you're a natural born electrician, you wouldn't be able to work out how the hell that was doing what it was doing. And certainly not in such a way as to help you to diagnose what was wrong. All right, so that's the business taken care of. I put that down to doggedness and don't panicness. That's the only thing I can call, that's the only thing I depend on or that have a bit of experience, a little bit of experience, not much, but enough to stop me panicking and giving up. So when I have some challenge like that, I know just enough to keep me on track. So the first thing I know is that badly wired things produce strange results that you couldn't predict. So I know not to spend time trying to work out logically what something's doing. You just have to know that when they're wired badly, it doesn't work properly and odd effects are produced. So knowing that allowed me to stick with it and then go back through the wiring that you'd done. There we are. Right. So I think we are now in the land of going to mask off the fingerboard. I think I'll do the fret polishing off camera, have a chance to have a drink and recover from the traumatic wiring madness. Yeah, do the fret polishing, which I've done the crowning, so to polish it off I'm just going to need to mask off the whole of the fingerboard, which will protect the frets. Well, I'll protect the wood actually while I polish out the frets. So this is always a matter of a mixture of masking tape and different sizes of masking tape. So this would be very boring, so let me just get on and do that and come back to you when that bit's ready to go. Okay, frets polished, sanded and polished out, nut fitted, tuners replaced, everything clean, nearly ready to go. A bit of oil to put on the fingerboard, and then we'll be putting upon the strings and then intonating, stretching them out and intonating them. So oil first. So looking nice, electrics sorted, although quite troublesome as you saw. I think that's the main thing for me, is with a bit more experience comes the ability to panic a bit less. There's nothing worse than when you're new to something and you don't really know how you're going to solve the problem. And it's a horrible feeling. It's kind of helplessness, really. So it's great to be able to kind of calmly think it through and use a bit of experience to figure out what's going on. And thankfully that seemed to work out. So I'm just going to put this thing back on, scratch plate, and then we're going to put the tins on. Oh, we've got strap buttons to do as well, so mustn't forget those. In fact, let's put those on now. They seem to be actually, they've got big enough screws, so I think they fitted all right. But we'll just get them, if we can, get them on now, out of the way, and then we're just dealing with the strings and the intonation. Okay, let's go to 3 on the torque, 3 on the torque, and we're in. Nice guitar this now, got to say. Nice and solid. Okay, we've got the stop bar coming up. We've got the bridge with its strange inserts. I'm not quite wanting to sit down on one end, but I guess under pressure it will. Dum 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 dum. So everything fitted. I haven't found a suitable cover for this, and the reason I'm not going to put any old one on is I just don't. These are pairs. I don't want to cut any new holes in the headstock, so since it came without one, I think we'll leave that for Tony to find another one if he wants one. Okay, so the action will have changed on this almost certainly, because I've had the bridge off and messed around with it. So these rotor sound ones I got as a pack of 10. They go in pairs, and I'd forgotten that. So put on here's the A and the B. It was the G and the D before, sorry, the E and the D. Now it's the A and the B. That doesn't make any sense. Why isn't it D and the E? But it wasn't. Anyway, right, so new strings on, 3 off to one side, 3 to the other. Right, let's just zoom in on the necky part. So here's how I fit. Excuse me, I've got sneezes. And sneeze. I think I kept you out of range. Put the headset back on. Right, with what I recommend with the adjustable nut, I recommend putting on the center 2 strings first, so the D and the G. Get them on, and then they'll hold down the nut, stop it from jumping off. So I'll show you in a second. I just did that without speaking my way through it. But I keep a sort of dependable minimum of string on the nut. So I'll do it with the G. So we go through the hole on the peg, out the other side, in the slot, in the saddle, pull it taut, and then I grab 1 fret behind and pull it back to the 2nd fret, and then hold it down, and that gives me 1 fret's worth of wind-on string. So then I let it come round, and I keep the held string, grab hold of it and put it under tension. The held string goes over the loose string. Oops, get it on the right tuner peg. Held string over the loose string, and as the loose string comes round, I pull it up and then direct the held string under the loose string as it comes round that time, and then seat it down on the slot, make sure it's on its bridge slot as well, on the notch on the bridge, and then I can cut these excess bits off. Now these are now seated at the right height. Sorry, they're not quite the right height on here. Let's just tighten this up a bit. So I can hear the strings when tightened are actually they're touching out. So I need to raise the posts first of all. I can find my screwdriver. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raise up the action at the bottom end here, give it back some playing action. We'll sort of home in on the correct action a bit later as we get closer, and then I'm keeping an eye on the nut 1st fret action as well, which is currently too low, so I'll need to wind that up a little bit. But the idea of using the adjustable nut is we start out with the action. We want really with the nut fully lowered into its base. God, I'm missing the bloody tuners. What am I doing? With the nut insert sitting firmly into its base with the grub screws withdrawn, we want the strings to just about rest lightly on the 1st fret, which is where they currently are. And then once that's done, then all we have to do is use the grub screws to lift them up. Now if they're sitting way too low, we'll be ending up having to lift it far too high, which means we've sanded down the base of the nut a little bit too much, or we've got the wrong nut insert. So in this case I think I've got it right. So it's a mixture of left-hand, right-handed gymnastics on when you're putting strings on the 3-a-side Les Paul style or Gibson style guitar. I'm just going to slack that one off so I can get at the excess string and cut it off. Likewise with that one. And high E. This is a 1046 set, which was what was on there to begin with. Get around there, you. Sometimes you get too much on and it's gone around 3 times there, but it's not the end of the world. The key thing really isn't the number of wraps around the post, although you want to minimize it if you can, but the key component of tuning stability are 2 main parts. One of them is the type of nut you use and the condition of the nut slots. So that's why I go for an adjustable tusk nut every time now, because it allows me to use the tusk material, which is non-stick Teflon, which is the best non-slippy stuff you can get for the purpose. And the other aspect of it is, because it's adjustable, I don't have to cut down into the slots, and I can use the adjustable nut to bring the action up to where I want it, which is a much more preferable state of affairs. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to, if I zoom out, I'm going to check my last fret action and get it to roughly where I want it. So 1.5 on that side, probably a bit too high on that side, but we need a bit of tension first, not too much, but just to keep things seated. So I think this one's too high, so we'll dial this one in a bit. 1.2. Put a bit of tension on this. Just slightly under, I would say. So I'm using a new slot to lift it up a little bit. Fraction over. Okay, I think that's good for starters. Now back down to here, I've got about right, we're a little low on the top end, so I'm going to dial in a very small amount on our adjustable nut, if I can get the thing in the end, and lift up, get some clearance, and even the tiniest bit on the other end. Right, deliciously out of tune, so let's dump the bits of string. So remember I said that 50% of your tuning stability comes from your choice of nut and the condition of the nut slots. The other 50% comes from the unreleased slack in your strings. So the other part is the slack in your strings, and to get rid of it you've got to physically stretch it out between thumb and 4 fingers, if your fingers will take it. You can buy a plastic device, string stretcher, which I've tried to use in the past, but it was kind of convenient and easy and it didn't hurt my fingers, but I broke more strings that way because I couldn't feel the amount of pressure I was putting in, and I think you get used to what each string will take, even between 10s and 9s or even 8s. You know to back off on a set of 8s because you don't really want to break that top string and have to buy a new pack of 8s, because 8s isn't always something you've got knocking around. So first time tuning or stretching. So you can hear how much we detuned it by stretching it. So I'm going to do the same again, This time I'm going to do a bit of stretching this way. Just got to be careful really, and I sometimes break them, and if I do, that's tough. So pull it that way, stretch it this way again, and really if you want your guitar to stay in tune, you've already got the nut part taken care of with a beautiful tusk, Teflon impregnated plastic to help the strings not stick or cause any friction. You've got factory slots that haven't been cut by luthier's files because we're raising them up to the right action. And so everything's almost perfect for this guitar to be in tune every time you want to play it. The thing you can do is to put this much time into stretching the slack out of it. Getting close. Now I'm just checking the action over the first fret, and I'm doing this, as you can see, by eyeball. So I'm just tweaking it to get it to play. Look at that, bending notes and it's still in tune. Now intonation. After that we're done. We're heading for the hills. So for intonation, oh yes, now I'm going to support this with this because otherwise the jack plug gets pushed out of the way. We don't want that. So I'm going to just check this now. I tend to do it with the treble pickup or the bridge pickup on, tone wide open. Okay. Fraction long on the A. So we don't have a lot of room for this game, but we'll do our best to adjust it. Come on, up you can. Fraction, tiny fraction long on the D, so we'll pull that back the last millimeters that it can go, and drag this one with us, and possibly this one just a tiny bit. I think we're about right. High E too sharp, but otherwise all good. Back a bit, back a bit, back a bit. I think we're there. showing it's a bit too long. It's actually quite interesting. That's about right where it should be. The pairs are in good order. Sorry, the threes. That's interesting. Well, according to that is the D and the A are a fraction flat, which is quite interesting considering the pattern generally. So I don't know what to believe. We're about as close as we can get. That's far enough jump forward. I can't see this being any further out than that, frankly. Well, according to this, we've got to bring the A and the E a little forward again, but it looks a bit odd in the sequence of things. There's a big jump between the two sets of three, but if that's what it wants, it's what it wants. More than I'm used to. Close as we're going to get with that bridge, which is why I do tend to prefer the roller bridges. But anyway, just because they seem to bring a bit more precision to the whole deal, as well as being kinder on strings, but that's not usually the end of the world. Right, so there we have it. Don't see how well, can't see quite how this appears. Everything done, fixed, ready to go. And yeah, low and light. Time to put it in the box. Right, thank you for watching. See you on another day.